earlier we told you about Israel's attack on Qatar, which Israel says was a precision strike on Hamas leaders. Both countries, Qatar and Israel, are critical American allies. So what does this mean for the U.S. and for Americans? Well, here are some of the details and background on what happened. The Israeli targets were part of Hamas's negotiating team in Qatar that had been working on a potential ceasefire in Gaza. The tiny Gulf kingdom of Qatar has been hosting negotiations for some time. A statement from Hamas, which the U.S. considers a terrorist organization, says Israel failed to kill any of its leaders. But 6 other people were killed, including a Qatari official. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that this was, quote, a wholly independent Israeli operation, while President Trump says he was very unhappy about every aspect of the attack. According to the White House, the president was given very little notice and tried to warn Qatar. A government spokesman in Doha condemned the attack, saying it, quote, will not tolerate this reckless Israeli behavior. By the way, Qatar is a major ally for the U.S. and hosts the largest American military base in the Middle East. So what happens now, as the U.S. is now caught between 2 of its key allies? Joining us to discuss is CBS News national security contributor Sam Vinograd. Sam, so glad to have you here to discuss this morning. Just to look into the background of this, what kind of planning would have taken place for an attack like this?
Well, Adriana, having been involved in targeting operations in the past, I can tell you that they take weeks, if not months, to plan. In the first instance, you need to have intelligence on where your targets are going to be. Intelligence has to be refined, and analysts have to determine whether it's credible. So that takes time. Once targets are identified and you know what location you want to target, then operators have to come up with a plan on how to attack that target and do so in a manner that minimizes civilian casualties. Then, of course, the leader of a country has to sign off on the plan itself. All of those steps don't happen overnight. They take weeks, if not months, to plan. And likely that was the case for the government of Israel as well.
Sam, I'm curious what you think the state of the peace negotiations or ceasefire negotiations are. Has Israel given up on them? Does Israel think Hamas would never concede, give up? I mean, the goal of the war, Israel says, is the complete elimination of Hamas. People have been saying for a long time that's not realistic. So are they just done with it?
Well, Israel has been methodically killing all leaders of Hamas, including in Iran, Ismail Haniyeh, and now Khalil al-Hayya in Qatar. So on the one hand, Israel has been methodically trying to decimate Hamas's leadership. On the other hand, Israel has been trying to use military force to pressure Hamas to come to the negotiating table in a meaningful fashion. The latest proposal that the United States presented has been accepted by the government of Israel, and Hamas was reviewing it. So I think we have a few variables here that Israel is trying to use military force to push Hamas to negotiate in a meaningful manner and to convince them that they have no other options, while also trying to decimate Hamas's leadership.
But if the negotiators themselves, the Hamas negotiators, were targeted by this attack, this is similar to you, I guess, like, is there any potential for a ceasefire when one of the party members was targeted and, you know, there was an attempted killing of them?
Well, ceasefire negotiations are likely at an impasse after the attempted assassination of the lead negotiators. But we have another question, Adriana, which is whether Qatar will be willing to continue serving as a mediator. We have to remember that Hamas first opened a political office in Qatar back in 2012 at the request of the United States, and that Israel and the United States had asked Qatar to play this mediating role between the government of Israel and Hamas. Qatar has played a mediating role in other situations, including, for example, with the Taliban. Qatar has been directly targeted by Israel and does likely now have a trust deficit when it comes to whether it can stay safe, whether it can maintain its sovereignty while playing this mediator role after Israel directly attacked it yesterday.
President Trump likes to cast himself in the role of peacemaker. He talks often about the 20 living hostages still in Hamas hands. He'd like to get them freed. What is the U.S. role in bringing that outcome and also relieving the suffering in Gaza?
Well, the United States likely has been furiously working the phones since the Israeli attack yesterday. One, to convince Qatar and other Arab nations not to retaliate against Israel in a fashion that will have long-term impacts. That can include as well severing diplomatic relations between Arab nations that signed the Abraham Accords under President Trump's first term, diplomatic agreements with Israel, normalization of relations, and or some other kind of retaliation. So the United States' role right now is likely to try to de-escalate the situation and then somehow to convince Qatar to remain as a mediator in this conflict and to somehow convince Hamas that their best option is to return to the negotiating table despite these strikes yesterday and despite Israel's ongoing occupation of Gaza.
Sam, really quickly, what does this mean for Americans at home with the U.S. caught now between two of its allies?
Well, in the short term, U.S. security officials are likely concerned that the Israeli attack and perceptions of U.S. complicity could lead individuals to try to strike Americans overseas or abroad. So there are likely security enhancements underway. But longer term, there are likely real questions about whether the U.S. As a security guarantor, as an ally, can lead nations to be safe from Israeli attacks. I think the notion of invulnerability, if you had an alliance with the United States, was shattered after these strikes yesterday.
Sam Vinograd, thank you so much. That was today's By the Way.